Hi guys, Jackie from Famish Farm, and we are back. We are cooking lemon pepper skewers. The common name is lemon pepper chicken Souvlakia. Probably slaughtering that. And why is this healthy? Chicken, lemon, a little bit of oil, some spices, some herbs. It doesn't get any healthier than that, and this screams summertime to me. So perfect recipe for a beautiful June night. And also Rod gets to grill. I found out today that I broke my heel in my fall off the extension ladder. So it sounds like a good time to let Rod shoulder the burden of grilling tonight and for many nights in the next 8 weeks or so. So anyway, let's get back to cooking, guys.
So our lemon pepper chicken skewers are made with 3 components. There's the chicken marinade that will sit in the fridge for an hour or so. Then the sauce that goes on the chicken when you're gonna put them on the skewers, and then a dipping sauce. So first up, we are going to go ahead and prepare some garlic. Recipe calls for 4 cloves. I'm just using a couple little ones I'm trying to use up. And you can see I've got chicken thighs sitting off to the side. And this was basically half of a family pack of chicken thighs. And then we're going to add some olive oil. We'll use our microplane to get about a tablespoon of lemon zest. I'm just going to do this whole lemon. Then season with a bunch of pepper and however much salt you like. This is sweet paprika. We'll guesstimate about a teaspoon and throw that in our bowl. And then we're getting ready to trim our chicken thighs. This is the bag that came out of the freezer. I'm just going to reuse it for the fat that I'm going to trim off these thighs. And it calls for cutting them into pretty big pieces, 2-inch squarish type pieces that will fit nicely on your skewers. So you may want to use gloves for this. I choose just to wash my hands and then just mix the olive oil and the dry ingredients into the chicken. And then of course you're going to have to wash your hands again if you don't use gloves. Now I'm going to choose to cover this with saran wrap and then put it into the fridge for a few hours until we're ready to eat. But it does say that you can go right to the skewers and then either put it in the oven or air fry it. We're going to choose to grill it tonight. So the second component is that grilling sauce, or what you'll put on it before it goes in the oven. Recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I go very light on that. We're going to go ahead and zest a lemon, and then it calls for about a teaspoon of honey, salt and pepper to taste. I always heavy on the pepper. And then a little bit of paprika. Again, I'm using just the sweet paprika. Then we'll give this a nice whisk and give it a taste too. Make sure it tastes all right. And then I reread the recipe. I'm forgetting the lemon juice. So I'll just use my small metal strainer to keep the seeds out of the sauce. And I end up juicing this whole lemon. It calls for 2 tablespoons. So that's about right. And then we're going to mix this up again and mix it pretty good. You want to see if you can get this emulsified and then give it a taste. And I didn't cover this. I just threw it in the fridge for later. Part 3 of the recipe is the easy tzatziki sauce, and she has a couple different options on her website. I just decided to go with the easy. We're going to go ahead and peel a cucumber and then grate it. And I end up not using this whole cucumber. I opt to make 1/2 of the recipe, and just a note, I wish I'd only done 1/4. It makes a lot. Then we'll be using 5 ounces of Greek yogurt. That's why I've pulled my scale out. And I have 2 little tiny cloves of garlic left that barely amounted to 1/4 teaspoon. It does call for 2 cloves. Use whatever you like. And the recipe does call for red wine vinegar, which I just don't have. So I'm going to go ahead and just substitute some apple cider vinegar. The recipe calls for 2 teaspoons. Then we're going to, again, just whisk this up to combine. For this part, definitely use the fresh herbs. I have to run out to my little planter by the carport to grab some fresh stems, and then I'm just going to mince it up. And then give that a stir, and I put the lid on. It goes in the refrigerator until later. So several hours has gone by. I have sprayed with cooking spray my grill basket, and now we'll start preparing the chicken on the skewers. I always use my stainless steel skewers. You could use bamboo. They do recommend you soak them before. Last week when we made the pork kebabs recipe, I really missed having some grilled fruit or vegetable with dinner. So I bought a pound of, or an 8-ounce package of Bellas. And so I'm going to use some olive oil and a little bit of salt, some pepper, and just for some fun, I have some everything but the bagel seasoning that I'm going to end up adding also. And then I just mix this nicely with my hands. Clean hands, guys. The recipe instructions call for baking in a 425-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes, flipping halfway through, or in a 400-degree air fryer for 12 minutes. And then flipping them, cooking for another 10 minutes. These are just going to go right on our grill outside, and Rod cooked them for about 22 minutes on the grill. The mushrooms were a great addition to this meal, and I wasn't sure if Rod was going to enjoy the tzatziki dipping sauce, but you know what? We both loved it.
Oh guys, I gotta tell you, the lemon pepper chicken Souvlakia or chicken skewers was excellent last night. We had that with her easy Greek tzatziki sauce, and I only made a half a recipe of that, and I kind of wish I'd cut it into quarters because I've got a lot left, but I'm just having it on my salads at lunchtime. So super easy. I mean, everything in that recipe, it's stuff you've got, other than the fresh lemons. Admittedly, I don't usually have fresh lemons in the house. There are weeks where I pick up 2 lemons and 2 limes just out of habit, and then I go weeks, months without having a fresh lemon. So just make sure you have the fresh lemons. It did take 2 full lemons, but that was a delicious, delicious dinner, and it will go on the summer rotation. Now, we used a half a family pack of thighs on that, and it called for 6 boneless thighs, and we did have 6 of them. I'm not sure weight-wise what that was, but it made enough for dinner for Rod and I. And then I've got enough for 2 lunches. We use 2 main dish salads for lunch every day, and that will be the protein on our salads at lunch. So I highly, highly recommend that recipe, and that was from Hungry Happens, both the Easy Greek Tzatziki and the lemon pepper chicken skewers. We are gonna do a Taco Tuesday casserole. And this is a budget-friendly recipe that is also healthy. We're going to do it with ground turkey instead of the ground beef. I'm going to use about half of the cheese that it calls for. It called for 2 cups. We're just going to use a cup. And then some tortillas and some taco shells that I crush up. You can use tortilla chips. Rod loves hard tacos, so I'm just crushed up. I took 3 taco shells and crushed those up. So anyway, let's get to cooking that, and I'll report back to you how that was. Not gonna be Taco Tuesday, it's Taco Friday, but we love Mexican. We make it at least once a week. So we're gonna serve this with refried beans and some sour cream. So I'll let you know how that is. Talk later.
So we're going to start by preparing some taco meat seasoned. And she calls for 9 tablespoons of taco seasoning mix. That is more than 2 packets. That's like 3 packets for 2 pounds of ground beef. I will be honest, I'm making this half a recipe, and I'm just going to use the equivalent of 1 packet. So 2 tablespoons and about a half or so. So we're going to ground our ground beef, or I am using ground turkey. You use whatever you've got. And we'll just let that brown up a bit, and then we'll add the onions here. And we'll get those nicely sauteed while the ground beef is cooking. While this is sauteing and browning, we are going to preheat our oven to 350 and then prepare whatever baking dish you're using. I'm going to do roughly a 9x9 square pan. It's just a little casserole dish. And here I'm going to add the taco seasoning. I use my own. This is without salt. And I just put in about 2.5 tablespoons and the 3/4 cup of water. And we'll let this cook down. The other things you're going to need for this are flour tortillas. I'm using 2 tortilla size ones, a 10-ounce can of corn. I'm just using a regular can of corn, but I'll use half of it. And then corn tortilla chips. And honestly, I don't have those, so I'm just going to use, I've got some regular corn taco shells, pre-made ones that I'm just going to crush up. Here we're getting about a cup of cheddar cheese, shredded, ready to go. Now we need a 1/4 cup of diced tomatoes, and I just am going to grab a handful of cherry tomatoes and I quarter them. And if they're bigger ones, then I cut them again. And that's going to be chopped for this recipe. And that's it, guys. We're ready to start assembling. We'll put a flour tortilla on the bottom. If you're obviously doing the bigger pan, you'll do about 2.5 on the bottom. And then half of our ground beef mixture, or ground turkey in my case. Spread that out nice, and then you're going to sprinkle some corn on top. And again, I've got a big can of corn here. I'm just going to use a little bit here. And next up is our cheddar cheese, and you're going to use 1/3 of the cheddar cheese. That'll leave enough for another layer, and then the top. Then half of your tortilla chips, or you can see my hard taco shells here. We'll crush those and put those over the top. And then we'll repeat the layers. Another flour tortilla, followed by our ground beef mixture. Spread that meat out, and then I add another 1/4 can of the corn. Another 1/3 of our shredded cheddar. The rest of the crunched up taco chips or tortilla chips. And we'll top with the remaining cheddar cheese, those tomatoes that we chopped up, and I'm going to use her optional ingredient, the 2 tablespoons of chopped black olives, which I almost always have. We put it on pizza, and so I always buy the can, and I always have extras. So we'll put those all on there. The night that I made this, I only printed the first page of the recipe, and I chopped off the cooking time. So the first time I put this in, I put it in for 20 minutes. The recipe instructions actually say 15 to 20 minutes, and based on my videotaped evidence, it did take 24 minutes in my oven. As this was baking, I was kind of worried I thought, would this be dry? Am I going to need to make salsa to go along with it? But I can happily report this was delicious. I said earlier, we had this with refried beans, some sour cream, and Rod has requested this again. So this is definitely going on the rotation. Easy, other than the ground beef. It takes a few minutes to do the ground beef and season it. So that's 10 minutes prep time right there. And if you had pre-cooked your ground beef or your ground turkey in my case, it'd be done in a flash. Super easy, super good. And our last recipe this week is Savory Sausage Breakfast Cups, which Rod and I are going to have for our breakfast for dinner night. We start out with some frozen breakfast sausage links. These are turkey. Use whatever you've got. The turkey ones are not as fatty, meaning there's not a lot of liquid fat that you'll see in the end product, where the regular ones that are made with pork and I think it's pork and rice are the main ingredients. Those you'll have probably a little extra grease that you may want to remove after the cooking phase. But just dice these up. The recipe doesn't call for you doing this. I think they fit much better in the little cups if you chop these up a bit. And then we have a few vegetables to prepare. First, we are going to do some green peppers. It calls for sliced. And again, I go ahead and chop because I think they fit in the little muffin tins easier. You're going to do about half a cup, and then some sliced or chopped scallions. You can see I've still got my red onions I'm trying to use up, so that is what I'm going to use for this recipe. And I do go pretty light on this. We are not huge fans of onions and eggs, but a little bit is fine. So this is probably going to end up being a couple tablespoons of chopped onions, so maybe half the onions that the recipe calls for. And then next we will grate a carrot, or in this case several carrots. I have some littler carrots. We need a cup of grated carrots. So we'll add the carrots to our other mix in the bowl here. So that's with our sausage and all our vegetables. And I will tell you guys that I just used the recipe as inspiration. It called for only 2 links to serve 2 people. That was not going to work for Rod and I, so we just went ahead and used the whole package, but kept the rest of the vegetables about the same. Here I have a package of sliced mushrooms. I'm not sure if these were white or baby bellas. I'm going to grate a 1/4 cup of cheddar cheese. And then we're going to go over to our skillet and we're going to add some oil. And we are going to, go ahead and get that pan prepared while we're right there. And I will tell you, use your 12 count muffin mix for this, because if you're doubling the recipe like I did, this makes more than 6 muffins. So now we're going to just basically saute the vegetables. We're going to cook this for about 5 minutes or until the sausage mixture is cooked. And then you're just going to want to cool it off. So instead of putting it in a plate, dirtying another plate, the cutting board's already dirty, so we're just going to scoop that onto the cutting board. We didn't forget those mushrooms. Into another bowl, we're going to add the mushrooms and the eggs, and it calls for 5 eggs, and so we will break those and then give those a whisk. And then we're just going to add all of our components. Now, it did want you to save the cheese and just add it at the end, sprinkle it on top. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to include the cheese right along with our veggie and sausage mixture. Get that all mixed up. And then we're going to get out our muffin tin here. I put it on a cookie sheet. I'm not sure if these are going to rise up and out of the pan, so I'm just being safe. It really didn't, but always better to be safe. I'm just scooping it up with my 1 cup measure that I've already got dirty. And as you can see here, this is a 1 cup ramekin basically. And then I'm going to add a little bit more to each of these cups, which is even better reason to be safe and use the cookie sheet. This is going to go into a 350 oven, and it says to bake for 20 minutes, and I will tell you I did extra time. I did probably about 25 minutes. Now, on breakfast for dinner night, we happen to have some fresh blueberries coming out of the garden, so I also made the Betty Crocker blueberry pancake to go along with it. So this is pushing the boundaries of healthy, but I can tell you it was a delicious dinner. All of these recipes will be linked down in the description. Guys, I really love having you here this week. come back next week and we've got something going on for summer. Thanks again for being here.